What was Odo Sensei doing that caught your attention that you liked so much? What was it about him?
It was his personality. You could tell, I think, right away his love for the art, where many of the um, in that trip we were honored to meet many of the Japanese and Okinawa masters. I mean, that's sort of like going to Mecca, going to Holy City, going to Jerusalem, whatever, whatever religion you're at. I mean, it was like going there. But there was a difference with the Okinawas, and particularly with Odo, that he was so open about his art, where many of the other teachers just culturally were much more reserved. May have had the same feeling and desire and love, but it didn't come out. Um, where with Odo, it was just like a bright light in a dark room.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's sort of that, and he just opened those arms to us, um, which again is different from the way most of the Japanese would treat someone coming in from the outside. So that's sort of what drew it to us. As well as we heard of his reputation. Master Trias spoke highly of him, and that he was a well-respected kata and particularly renowned weapons practitioner. And weapons was something that I really had a niche and desire to do.
Was weapons something that you sort of took to naturally from your early training, and it's sort of like you and weapons kind of found each other, and it was a natural talent for you?
I always loved weapons. The person that instilled that was Glenn Primrow. Glenn Primrow, as I said, had a school. He's a Shorin practitioner, and he had a school about 5 miles north of us in the Pittsburgh area. And we would have, back then in the early 60s, you didn't have tournaments. I think the first national championship was like in 63 somewhere. Well, in Pittsburgh, there wasn't anything until really almost the 70s, early 70s. But we had inter-dojo shiais, no kata. Basically, just one dojo would come over and visit the other, and then you'd line up, and everyone would go on the mat, two at a time, and fight. And that was, no points, and sort of winner standing, loser isn't, and then you'd swap stories and have a good time. That's the way it was. Well, we had a number of those with Glenn Primrow's school. So that was the first I got to meet him and see him. And his forte, he was again known for his weapons, and he was an excellent kata practitioner. And what struck me was his use of the sai. He used to do a shimabuku no sai kata. And it was just, I'd watch it and my mouth would drop. I was just awestruck with it. I loved the way he was working the weapon and manipulating the weapon. And that was the thing that started to get me. There was also another gentleman, an ex-Marine in the Pittsburgh area, Joe Pennywell, who did Psi. And then some of the magazines, the early magazines, I remember an early photo of Bill Hayes doing a Shimabuku no Sai form as well. And so these were some of the guys that influenced me to say, I really want to, so I just started to search out anywhere I could find to pick up weapons.
Speaking of weapons with Odo Sensei, could you talk a little bit about why Odo Sensei decided to integrate weapons into Okinawa Kenpo? If Nakamura Sensei was on board with that, and if that was a smooth transition, or if there were some difficulties for Odo Sensei in doing that. Did he catch flack, basically, is the quick way of saying it?
Oh, he caught a lot of flack. What it was, typically you had your karate organizations and your weapons organizations or associations in Okinawa, and they were separate groups and entities. You had some people cross-training on either side, but they tended to be separate. Most of the karate seniors dabbled a little bit here and there in weapons. Odo Sensei started a sort of a dual. I would probably refer to him as like a kata sponge. He had the ability. He loved kata, and he it felt very strongly of keeping the old katas alive so that they wouldn't get changed and wouldn't get lost. And that's why we ended up with 18 open hand kata, although Nakamura sensei only did 12.
Mm-hmm.
He also had early exposure to weapons, and particularly a strong focus into the Matayoshi system, and became one of the members of the ruling body or senior teachers or board of directors of there. I think he was vice president of Matayoshi's group. But Nakamura sensei, as he got older, wasn't doing a lot of the teaching in the dojo anymore, and Odo sensei was teaching as well, and started to, at Nakamura sensei's request, do a weapons class there as well. And Odo sensei told us that prior to Nakamura's death, he asked him to continue that karate and the kobudo and make them together, or togethers, as Odo sensei would say. And so that was really the birth of the Okinawa Kenpo Karate Kobudo system. Politically, that steps on organizational feet. So that was a bit of a problem early on, in that you have a Karate Kobudo program, and now the Kobudo's no longer under the control of the Kobudo organization as such. As time has occurred, now if you look at it, just about each one of the major karate programs, traditional karate programs over there, has a Kobudo program as part of their package. Some of them are a very strong program. Some of them are not as strong, but they've all sort of adopted that, and that's become more of a approach. You still have separate Kobudo organizations, but you also have Nagasato, Nagamine all have their own Kobudo programs and as part of their karate. So it was the wrong thing initially, and then all of a sudden everybody else jumped on the bandwagon as well, and it sort of became the thing. What he continued to do was teach people the Kobudo beyond just the Okinawa Kenpo system, and that's what the Okinawa Kenpo Karate Kobudo Federation, when it came into play, actually became. And that was just one of the many iterations of that organization. You have to start back when it used to be the Okinawa Kenpo League, all Okinawa Kenpo League. Prior to that, it was Nakamura and Shimabuku Sensei Zenro were involved with the All Japan Karate Association Okinawa Special District group. And then when Nakamura died in '69 and Zenro Shimabuku in '70, you had a loss of leadership. They were two of the key senior people.